Welcome to Sexpertease. I'm your host and favorite sexpert, Erica Rivera, keeping marriages exciting and single people safe. Today's episode is all about something so many people struggle with, but don't always have the language for, and that's receiving. Receiving love, receiving pleasure, and receiving support without guilt, shame, or overthinking it. And to help us unpack this, I'm joined by Lorina Manzanita. She's a somatic sex and relationship coach, SE trauma resolution practitioner, and educator who specializes in helping people reconnect with their bodies, honor their desires, and build healthier, more embodied relationships. Lorina brings a wonderful and powerful blend of trauma-informed work, nervous system awareness, and deep relational insight, especially for people who find themselves overgiving, disconnected from their needs, or struggling to fully receive in intimacy. So let's get into it. Lorina, welcome to the show.
Hello, Erica. Thanks for having me. Honored to be here.
I appreciate it so much. So we're just going to jump right into it. I've gotten to know you a little bit prior to this conversation, and, you've talked about the neurobiology of receiving. What does that actually mean, and why is receiving often harder than giving in intimate relationships?
Yeah. First,
I know where to start.
Right in there. First, I want to preface it and say that, it's not hard for everybody to receive without guilt. There's degrees of guilt. There's a little twinge of am I doing this? Is it okay to be asking for this? To soul-crushing guilt, where it feels like we need to hide and bury ourselves deep inside our own bodies and minds, and any authentic expression of desire or want is somehow dangerous. So it's a spectrum. I don't expect anybody to be utterly liberated from guilt. I would be a bit concerned, honestly. Look like sociopathy. That said, for the people I work with who tend to be overgivers, empaths, people who really care almost to a fault about other people's experiences, most of us grew up in environments, childhoods, where our needs weren't paid attention to. And in that context, when maybe we might have reached out and we got a wall, distress, harm, an absence of our needs being responded to in a beautiful, healthy, and grounded way, we can shame ourselves for having needs at all. It's not, this need doesn't have space to exist.
Right. I think that's very relatable for a lot of people. Yeah, especially with different cultural or religious upbringings as well.
For sure.
So
yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
But you asked about neurobiology, so I just wanted to say that in that young state, our brains are super prolific. They've got so many different neural pathways, but our experiences can highlight and prune.
Gotcha.
Right? And so for many of us who didn't receive those environments, those relationships where our needs and receiving was a part of daily life, it's almost like we can prune those neural pathways. And so when receiving is on the table, there's somebody there who's interested in our well-being, interested in our desires, and like, what do you want? They might ask that. It might be a case of a deer in headlights, right? Like, nobody's asked me that before. I don't know how to respond. Those neural pathways are like, got pruned a while ago. I need to dig to find them.
Right? When was the last time I could express what I wanted? Wait a second.
Right.
So, okay. So I was going to mention too, because you said it's on a spectrum as far as like receiving with or without guilt and shame and things like that. Why do you think it is harder during an intimate relationship though, versus like some of our other interpersonal relationships?
Great question.
Yeah.
I think there's something to do with the attachment bond. So, like I said, when we're younger, so much gets wired in to our nervous systems. And our romantic relationships invoke our attachment systems, which invoke those memories implicitly of what it was like to be bonded to this other human being. And in this case, when we're really, really young, for our survival.
Right.
If we're not paid attention to, if we're met with indifference, our literal survival is at stake as tiny, tiny ones. So yeah, that translates into our romantic relationships. Yeah. And so there can be like kind of a survival response around how we're interacting.
So do you feel like those attachment patterns, they show up pretty early in life then when it comes to pleasure, desire, saying yes without guilt? So a lot of the attachment patterns and trauma responses, would you say, show up pretty early on?
I think they're encoded pretty early on.
Okay.
I think little ones are pleasure-seeking beasts. Really? Right? I've got a friend, her little one is like 2 years old, and he's like unabashedly grabbing for those breasts when he's hungry, right? When he wants some comfort. And I feel like a lot of us have those natural instincts from a very young age to seek out pleasure, to explore our bodies, to explore connection and intimacy. For some weird reason, we are not allowed to think of ourselves as sexual beings until we reach high school. But so much of the core, like, let's say, alphabet of a successful romantic sexual relationship gets learned in our childhood.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would be surprised to hear that, actually, because like you said, a lot of us are conditioned to kind of not even really recognize that till maybe high school or beyond in some cases. So, and I feel like it's important that people understand how early, like you said, this is encoded in us. It would help us understand a lot of trauma responses and different types of sexual responses to things as well. So I think many people struggle to honor like their own boundaries because they're afraid of disappointing others as well. Yeah. So what's happening with our nervous system when boundaries do feel unsafe? And that kind of goes along with these trauma responses as well.
Right. I think when it comes to boundaries, what's really important is not so much constantly maintaining boundaries or being constantly wide open. It's having the capacity to attune to the current circumstances accurately. So our boundaries or our openness is calibrated accurately, right? So let's say we go on a first date and I get wildly excited about this person, and then I just like toss all the boundaries out the door. But we don't really know who this person is, right? Right. So there's almost like the fantasy, the longing to have somebody we can really trust precedes, kind of clouds our perceptions of the current moment reality, and our boundaries are miscalibrated.
Okay.
Versus sometimes somebody has been really hurt by people in the past. They go on that first date and they're just kind of suspicious across the board, right? And they're like not really disclosing. They're not allowing themselves to be vulnerable in any way. They're like coming in with presuppositions around what this person is capable of without really hanging out in a state of wonder or possibility.
Yeah, I actually, I had a client once who had gone through a trauma, was open to dating, but a lot of her attempts kind of failed because if the other person wanted to ask about her personal experiences in any way, shape, or form, even something as simple as asking, let's say, and I'm just making this part up because I don't want to divulge in her story too much, but as an example, what your favorite movie is, that seems very simple. But she actually ended the connection with this person because she felt they were asking too much. And, and I felt so bad because I'm like, no, this person was just trying to get to know you. So it kind of, you're right. Like you have to figure out a way to kind of like, it is okay to have boundaries, of course, but adjusting according to the situation that you're in, because she was having a hard time allowing any type of vulnerability to happen. Right. So she was on that end of the spectrum, where, of course, the other example that you gave, let's just put all the walls down. I can get this person. That's equally as,
right. Yeah.
You got to be cautious.
Exactly. I like to think of like a healthy boundary as a semi-permeable membrane. So it's like depending on the environment, what's in the solution around the cell, it'll open up to receive nourishment and close down to keep out toxins and
I like that example a lot, right? Actually. Yeah. So you also work a lot with desire and erotic sovereignty. How did you help people reconnect with what they actually want, especially after years of self-abandonment? Because some people are on that end of the spectrum too, of like.
First word that comes to mind is practice, honestly. It's like practice asking yourself, what do I really want right now? Oh, I need a glass of water. What do I really want right now? A little bit of movement would be nice. It's like oftentimes after years of self-abandonment, somebody's like looking for a big change and then they ask really big questions of like, should I move out of this house? Should I fly across the country and fill in the blank? But if they haven't spent a whole lot of time getting to know themselves, what they like, what they don't like, if they've spent the majority of their time focusing on other people and to themselves, they're a bit of a stranger because they haven't had that curiosity directed towards themselves. Yeah, in those cases, I think it was really helpful to just repeatedly ask yourself that question. Pancakes or eggs, right? And then the more and more you get better at asking yourself those questions, getting little data points, having an experience that lands in your body of like, oh, I don't really like being touched that way, that's good information. That's a no. Unless, oh, when somebody touches me this way, I notice myself relax a little bit more. Oh, I notice if somebody touches me this way, but after we have this particular conversation, it's really great and my body really opens up. So it's a process to learn about oneself if you haven't paid a whole lot of attention to yourself.
So would you recommend that there be more self-exploration, especially before dating again, especially if you're someone who has gone through years of self-abandonment, perhaps you're used to being a people pleaser, because I've met a lot of people that even if they were to ask themselves, do I want A or B? Or if someone were to ask them A or B, they kind of adjust their answer to the person they're speaking with, or, it's almost like they have a hard time being honest with themselves. Like, what do you want without caring about how someone else's reaction is going to be?
Great
Yeah, so is
question.
this something that, perhaps someone in this situation should be exploring more before having a partner again or dating again? Or
My first instinct is that, like, if somebody says, oh, I need to do all these things before I start dating again, that it could, like, if we go too far with that, it could be a bit of a perfectionism of like, I need to be fixed before I inflict my messy self on another human being.
Yep.
So, you're never going to get a black and white answer from me, just to be clear.
Right. No. But yeah. But that's why I like this though, because I like to ask the questions that maybe like our viewers are wondering, because these are some of the questions sometimes I get. And a lot of it is on a spectrum. A lot of it is a lot of gray area. A lot of it depends on where you are personally in life too. So, of course, love to hear your perspective on that, because like I said, there's been, at least a few people I've come across where they worry so much about what other people think because they were used to being that people pleaser in a previous relationship. And it's like, how do we get out of that habit of like, what do I want?
Yeah. I think it could be really helpful to spend some time focusing on yourself in non-romantic contexts, food, friendship, activities. If you have no clue what you like, what you don't like, and just your basic lifestyle, then it could be helpful to like tend to those questions and do some explorations on that level. So when you do start dating, you're like more oriented of like, oh, I like this sport and I don't like going to these type of climates. And so when you're dating, you've got more information to like assess for compatibility. That said, I think that we could go too far with self-work before we start dating. If there's a little bit of uncertainty, it could be great to have like a spotter almost, like a sexpert, a coach, a dear friend, somebody you know has your back where you can kind of take your math, like have them check your math, if you will, around like, oh, they've been saying this thing and I'm noticing myself say this thing. I'm not, it kind of feels like my old pattern. What do you think?
Right.
You know and love me. I'd love to get your opinion.
Right. I love that idea of a spotter. Something that I've told a few people too is, I often get a question like this. You may get a similar question of, my relationship is brand new. What's the point of having a coach this early or a therapist this early? And I call it relationship maintenance. Being able, like you said, kind of like the spotting, being able to kind of pinpoint certain things that you may question as they happen, rather than, let's say years go by and there's a lot of damage that now you have to work on. I feel like it's easier if you have that kind of relationship maintenance from the very start. Why not? Even if you have a quote unquote healthy relationship, why not have that spotter? So I really like that you said that, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if we're prone to people pleasing and maybe have a history of attaching prematurely. Having somebody in your corner as you're dating and you're evaluating, is this a person a good match? What kind of relationship do I want with this human being? Do I need to set boundaries with this human being? Having somebody and a space to reflect around what's working and what's not working makes it less likely that we'll get stuck in a pattern that's not going to serve us in the long run.
Gotcha. Yeah. And I think that process too, going back to our main topic of receiving without guilt, if you're talking through these things and going through that practice, I feel you're also less likely to feel guilty about some of those decisions of, this is how I feel and this is what I prefer, and I'm okay with that,
Yeah.
So
yeah. And to kind of have somebody normalize our desires. I remember working once with this man where he came in and he was feeling shamed because he liked cuddles. Prior to, I know, it's so sad.
Yeah.
So weird. But like the woman he was dating really liked her sex kind of rough, right? And then so like the fact that he had softer desires didn't match with what her needs were or desires were, and because he's a bit of a people pleaser, he felt something was maybe wrong with him for not matching. I know it's kind of gender flipping the script here, but coming to me and speaking about that, I was able to like validate his needs, validate that he wanted this particular thing. Okay, it's fine that she doesn't want, that's not what her current needs are. Your needs are important.
Right.
Because two
partners can be on completely separate ends of the spectrum as far as what their sexual needs might be in this case. And I think it's important that each partner, is still validating that person's needs, even if they're the complete opposite of yours. And
for sure.
Yeah, that's this poor man. Like, cuddles are great. What?
I know, right? Yay, cuddles! And also, a lot of men are kind of like put in this man box.
Right.
Yeah. So it was great to be able to like champion and validate his needs and desires. Again, the importance of having a spotter. Absolutely. If you're an inherent people pleaser and you find yourself conforming to somebody else's needs and desires, and you might feel guilty for wanting something other than what they want, having people in your corner that can say, what you want is beautiful.
Right.
And it might not be available there. And what you want is beautiful.
And those needs are not always gender specific, because we do tend to say, okay, like, men should like it this way and women should like it this way. And it's like, no, sometimes it's all over, like it doesn't matter. So it is important to have that spotter who's there to, like you said, validate those needs. So that being said, what does healthy and embodied intimacy look like when it is grounded in the nervous system safety rather than through performance or obligation?
Right. I'm a huge fan of interpersonal neurobiology, which is Dan Siegel's body of work. He really dives into attachment theory and mindfulness and neurobiology and something called complexity theory. But his description of health is a well-integrated system. And that's like a nice balance between connection and differentiation. So like you have your desires, I have my desires, we have some aligned desires, and we also have our different things, and that's respected and appreciated. So when a system is well integrated and has a balance of those two things, it's flexible, it's adaptable, it's coherent, it's energized, and it's stable. that would be lovely if we experienced more of those qualities in relationship to pleasure, embodiment, desire, intimacy, flexibility of like, oh, you want this, I want that. Let's get creative. Maybe how can we get both of our needs met and desires met, right? Stable. Stable is like I'm a bit consistent around how I'm communicating versus being super erratic. Like the indications of lack of health or well-being is too much rigidity or too much chaos in a complex, not well integrated system. So if we're getting really fixated on something, or if we're becoming super erratic and conflicted around what we say, what we do, what we want, how we act,
Yeah, and a lot of these things can be navigated through open communication, because that's another thing that I tend to run into with certain clients is a conversation would have solved A, B, or C, whatever it is that, we're discussing at the time. So I think it is important to be, really open with your partner about what those needs look like and, how can we, cater to what we both want, in this relationship or in this sexual dynamic or, whatever the case may be. So I think communication is also such a big part of that. And I had dived into attachment theory a little bit, a couple episodes ago, and man, there is so much to that just on its own.
Agreed.
I encourage our listeners or anyone who's watching to definitely figure out like what your attachment pattern is. I learned so much about myself just reading about attachment theory, and there's a lot more patterns than what's like familiar, I realized too. So like being both an anxious attachment as well as there's like combinations, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Very interesting.
And also our attachment styles can show up in different relationships.
Right.
Like you have a preoccupied relationship with your mom, but maybe an avoidant one with your dad. And likewise, we can shift around in our romantic relationships depending on the whole system, not just one identity.
Yeah, it's super interesting. When I was a lot younger, I just thought that, you're one, this is my pattern or my style, and that's how I am with everyone, but that is so not the case.
Yeah.
So, for someone listening who wants to start increasing their capacity for pleasure and receiving, what's one small practical place that they can begin?
Again, practice. Practice saying what you want, even if it feels a little scary. And when it is feeling a little scary, trying to speak to yourself in validating, compassionate ways. So in a sense, you're kind of reparenting yourself. Like, yes, those needs are important. Yes, your desires are important. I know it's scary. Totally makes sense while it's scary.
Yeah, reparenting yourself. Yeah, that is so relatable, because there's some people that have to grow up really fast, depending on their, how they grew up, what their environment was like. And I'll notice that later in life, they're kind of more youthful again. And I think that's part of it, is learning, kind of going back and kind of relearning, like my feelings are important or my needs are important. And you're right. It's absolutely like you're reparenting yourself. And I think that's a perfect place to start. I would have to agree. So time flew by. So yeah, it really did. I would love to continue to sit and chat with you. Hopefully, maybe we can do this again.
That sounds great.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and put your website up, please let our audience know anything you might be currently working on and how they can find you.
Yeah. So I offer a free mini course called the Nourished, the Neuroscience of Receiving Beautifully. So that's a free offering if you get into my mailing list. And also I'm launching a 6-week group program for professional empaths, women who struggle with owning their desires and boundaries. And that program is called Held and Fulfilled. And so if that's at all intriguing to your people, you can find more information by going to that website.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please definitely check out Lorina and everything that she is doing. And thank you again for joining us this evening. Please stay curious, stay safe, and we will see you next Tuesday night. Bye, Lorina.
Bye, Erica.